Jaya Gati Ganadaya Giri Dare Hari Yashodanandana Rajaganarandana Yashodanandana Rajaganarandana Yashodanandana Rajaganarandana Yashodanandana Rajaganarandana Jamuna Tiradana Hari Jamuna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Madhava. Gaura Premanandi, Jain Vishupad Paramahamsa, Pri Vrajgacharya Stotra Satta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace, Chilabhai Charanaravind Bhakti Vedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki, Antakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki, Kandiviti Founder Acharya Divine Grace Sri Prabhupada Ki, Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki, Samavata Bhakti Vrinda Ki, Hari Nam Sankirtan Ki, Grantaraj SrimadBhagavatam Ki, Jaini Tagore Pimanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Takshurumiritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaisnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanvitam Sya Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisa Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamam Hari Priye Vansakalpa Tirubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam namaskritya Naram chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayam udirayet. Before reciting the SrimadBhagavatam, let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasayanam Mahat. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, the Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara, Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Sarabhyaya Namaha. Om Sarabhyaya Namaha. Om Sarabhyaya Namaha. Mukham karoti vasalam pangom langayate girna yakripa tamaham bande Sri Varum Dinataram yakripa tamaham bande Sri Varum Dinataram. Hare Krishna. On time. So we continue this morning reading from the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 4, which is entitled The Process of Creation. The last 3 or 4 days, we've been hearing very wonderful prayers offered by Shukadeva Goswami as he prepares to answer the question raised by Parikshit Maharaj. So yesterday we did 18, and we mentioned that because it was quite long, we will continue 18. So we get a chance to again repeat this verse, chapter 4, text 18. Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhira Shumbha Yavana Kasadaya Yenye cha papa yada pasrayasraya Shudyanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha Kirata hunandra pulinda pulkasha Abhira Shambha Yavana Kasadaya Yenye Chapapa Yada Pastrayasraya Shudyanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhira Shambha Yavana Kasadaya Yenye Chapapa Yada Pasrayasraya Shridyanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha. We'll go directly to the translation and continue where we left off yesterday in the purport. Translation. Kirata Huna Andra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhira Shumbha Yavana, members of the Kasha races and even others addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord due to his being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Kindly repeat after me. Kirata, Huna, Andra, Pulinda, Pulkasha, Abhira, Shumbha, Yavana, members of the Kasa races. Members of the Kasa races. And even others addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord due to his being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Purport. Let's see. Yes. So I will continue from the description of Abhira. Abhira. This name also appears in the Mahabharata, both in the Shabha Parva and Bhishma Parva. It is mentioned that this province was situated on the river Saraswati in Sindh. The modern Sindh province formerly extended on the other side of the Arabian Sea. Where is Sindh now? It's Pakistan now, eh? Border, like, yeah. Punjab. Okay. Northern. Yes. And all the inhabitants of that province were known as the Abhiras. They were under the domination of Maharaj Yudhishthir, and according to the statements of Markandeya, the Mlechas of this part of the world would also rule over Bharata. Later on, this proved to be true, as in the case of the Pulindas. On behalf of the Pulindas, Alexander the Great conquered India, and on behalf of the Abhiras, Muhammad Ghori conquered India. these Abhiras were also formerly Kshatriyas within the Brahminical culture, but they gave up the connection. The Kshatriyas who were afraid of Parasuram, uh, and had hidden themselves in the Caucasian hilly regions, later on became known as the Abhiras, and the place they inhabited were known as Abhiradesh. Abhiradesh, yeah. So that's a very big history uh, in reference to what is mentioned here. Parasuram, uh, when Kshatriyas at some point became, uh, Kshatriyas are meant to be implementing rules, but sometimes Kshatriyas become unruly, unruly themselves. They don't follow their own rules, or they don't follow the rules of the uh, Vedic culture. What is one of the important rules for Kshatriyas to follow? They must follow the Brahmanas. Kshatriyas are meant to rule under the guidance of Brahmanas, and sometimes it's very easy for them to kind of, because they have so much power, they have so much wealth, they have so much land, they have so many followers, they can easily think themselves to be independent from the Brahmanas, and sometimes even independent from God, as in the case of that famous king who Prithu Maharaj, Vena, King Vena, the infamous King Vena, who declared, as of tomorrow, no more jagyas in my country. Brahmanas, you can retire. We don't need you anymore. So, and Prabhupada also in that respect mentions how he was giving a lecture in America. And he mentioned that actually when the Kshatriyas fled India, they fled to different countries like Europe. And we know that North America is populated by people who came from Europe, mainly France and England. So Prabhupada was mentioning that some of the people, not everyone, uh, are from being from the region of Europe. Prabhupada said, you are from the Kshatriya stock, descendants. Of course, totally fallen, unqualified. But we see remnants of that in different countries, especially in the USA. They have very much a Kshatriya perverted reflection of the Kshatriya spirit. Yeah. It is said that someone posted recently, of the 500 or so wars, I forget exactly how many, but in the last maybe 20 years, 80% of those wars apparently are instigated by the United States of America. Anyways, it's very difficult when we start talking about Kshatriyas not to speak about politics, but we will avoid doing that, especially in the context of what's happening around the world today. So let's continue here. Shumbas or Kankas, the inhabitants of the Kanka province of old Bharata, mentioned in the Mahabharata. Then next are the Yavanas. Yavana was the name of one of the sons of Maharaj Yayati, who was given the part of the world known as Turkey to rule. Therefore the Turks are Yavanas due to being descendants of Maharaj Yavana. Interesting. The Yavanas were therefore Kshatriyas, and later on, by giving up the Brahminical culture, they became Malacha Yavanas. Malacha Yavanas. I mean, fallen Yavanas. Description of the Yavanas are in the Mahabharata, Adi Parva 85:34. Another prince called Turvasu was also known as Yavana, and his country was conquered by Sahadev, one of the Pandavas. The western Yavana joined with Duryodhana in the battle of Kurukshetra under the pressure of Karna. It is also foretold that these Yavanas also would conquer India, and it proved to be true. Yeah. Next group is Kasa. The inhabitants of the Kasa Desh are mentioned in the Mahabharata, in the section Drona Parva. Those who have a stunted growth of hair on the upper lip are generally called Kasas. As such, the Kasas are the Mongolians, the Chinese, and others who are so designated. The above mentioned historical names are different nations of the world. So I was mentioning yesterday, how a few days ago, one devotee did very extensive study, and he has some videos on what is called Vedic geography. Very fascinating, Vedic, and therefore the different Shastra, various Puranas, they have all kinds of description and details of the different races in these different parts of the world. So the above historical names are different nations of the world. Even those who are constantly engaged in sinful acts are all corrigible to the standard of perfect human beings. There is hope for everyone. If they take shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Jesus Christ and Muhammad, two powerful devotees of the Lord, have done tremendous service on behalf of the Lord on the surface of the globe. And from, some people might have comments on this. Actually, what happens very often, even if it happens within our own, let's say, Vaishnava Sampradaya, it happened just like 500 years ago with the advent of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that some of the so-called followers of Lord Chaitanya deviated, isn't it? And the whole Sahaja movement flourished like anything and became like the standard for like about 300 years. So very often there will be some maybe prophet or some empowered personality who will give different good instructions, but then people start changing. Just like it is said in the early days of Christianity, the whole concept of reincarnation was there. People believed in reincarnation. It was part of the Christian, you see. In the Bible, Jesus also speaks about reincarnation. But at some particular point, some kind of meeting they had, they passed a resolution, no, have to be careful about resolutions. Yeah.
Dangerous.
Huh?
Dangerous resolution. Dangerous.
Yes. So, so to continue here, and from the version of Srila Shukadeva Goswami, it appears that instead of running a godless civilization in the present context of the world situation, if the leadership of world affairs is entrusted to the devotees of the Lord, for which a worldwide organization under the name and style of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has already been started, then by the grace of the Almighty Lord, there can be a thorough change of heart in human beings all over the world, because the devotees of the Lord are able authorities to effect such a change by purifying the dust-worn minds of the people in general. Yes. That's a very interesting expression. Dust-worn minds means that polluted minds, covered minds. The politicians of the world may remain in their respective positions because the pure devotees of the Lord are not interested in political leadership or diplomatic implications. So Prabhupada had to make this point, as he is now quite often, that the Krishna consciousness movement is not interested in taking power in any country. Everyone can remain in their respective positions. All the leaders, present leaders in the world can be there. They just need to have a change of heart. Heart transplant from materialistic vision, atheistic vision, to God conscious vision. So, yeah, Prabhupada mentioned you can be a Christian, you can follow the teachings of Lord Jesus, but you should follow those teachings. And whenever Prabhupada would meet maybe representatives of Christian faith, immediately he would challenge them. You're not following. Lord Jesus said, thou shalt not kill. Why are you eating chicken and other things? Yeah. Thou shalt not kill. Lord Jesus did not say, thou shalt not murder. He said, thou shalt not kill. Kill means everyone. Everything, everyone. So the devotees are interested only in seeing that the people in general are not misguided by political propaganda, which is happening today, and in seeing that the valuable life of a human being, is not spoiled in following a type of civilization which is ultimately doomed. Prabhupada uses this word doomed quite a few times. Modern civilization, he says, is a doomed civilization. He's mentioned it here also. If the politicians, therefore, would be guided by the good counsel of the devotees, then certainly there would be a great change in the world situation by the purifying propaganda of the devotees, as shown by Lord Chaitanya. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada recommended that the members of parliament in India, before sitting in the assembly, should attend Bhagavatam class. Then their mind will be fresh and they'll be able to pass proper legislation. Yeah. As Shukadeva Goswami began his prayer by discussing the word Yat Kirtanam, so also Lord Chaitanya recommended that simply by glorifying the Lord's holy name, a tremendous change of heart can take place by which the complete misunderstanding between the human nations created by politicians can at once be extinguished. That would be especially nice for Ukraine and Russia, and other nations for that matter. And after the extinction of the fire of misunderstanding, other prophets will follow, The destination is to go back home, back to Godhead, as we have several times discussed in these pages. And the purport continues, according to the cult of devotion, generally known as the Vaishnava cult, there is no bar against anyone's advancing in the name of God realization. A Vaishnava is powerful enough to turn into a Vaishnava, even the Kirata, etc., as above mentioned. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:32, it is said by the Lord that there is no bar to become a devotee of the Lord, even for those who are low-born, or women, Shudras, or Vaishyas. And by becoming a devotee, everyone is eligible to return home back to Godhead. The only qualification, what is the only qualification for those who haven't read the purport? The only qualification is to take shelter, is that one takes shelter of the pure devotee of the Lord who has thorough knowledge of the transcendental science of Krishna, which means Bhagavad Gita, SrimadBhagavatam. Anyone from any part of the world who becomes well conversant in the science of Krishna becomes a pure devotee and a spiritual master for the general mass of people, and may reclaim them by purification of heart. Though a person be even the most sinful man, he can at once be purified by systematic contact with a pure Vaishnava. So you were asking the question yesterday, what does it mean to come in contact with Vaishnava? So Prabhupada is giving a further insight here by using the word systematic. The whole process of spiritual life, devotional service in particular, is very systematic, very methodical. That's described in the Bhagavatam, first canto especially. So this is being mentioned here, that one can at once be purified by systematic contact with the pure Vaishnava. That means on a regular basis, associating, hearing, and executing various activities. A Vaishnava, therefore, can accept a bona fide disciple from any part of the world without any consideration of caste and creed and promote him by regulative principles to the status of a pure Vaishnava who is transcendental to Brahminical culture. The system of caste or Varnasrama dharma, so Varnasrama dharma is making its way in the purport, is no longer regular even amongst the so-called followers of the system. So systematically also refers to, naturally, Varnasrama dharma. Prabhupada is pointing out that the system is no longer being followed properly. And then that is one of the reasons why Srila Prabhupada wanted that the system be re-established as far as possible. Yeah. Of course, Prabhupada is telling here, nor is it now possible to re-establish the institutional function in the present context of social, political, and economic revolution. Without any references to the particular custom of a country, one can be accepted to the Vaishnava cult spiritually, and there is no hindrance in the transcendental process. So, of course, Prabhupada here is making the point that it's not possible to reinstate as it was so strictly followed, let's say, decades or centuries ago. And therefore, if one becomes fully committed as a Vaishnava by following the process recommended by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that will lead one in the right direction. At the same time, as we know, in many other places, Srila Prabhupada explains that we should be making an effort to whatever extent it may be possible, to reestablish the basic principles of social system called Varnasrama. By the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the cult of SrimadBhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita can be preached all over the world, reclaiming all persons willing to accept the transcendental cult. Such cultural propaganda by the devotees will certainly be accepted by all persons who are reasonable and inquisitive without any particular bias for the custom of the country. The Vaishnava never accepts another Vaishnava on the basis of birthright, just as he never thinks of the deity of the Lord in the temple as an idol. And to remove all doubts of this, in this connection, Srila Shukadeva Goswami has invoked the blessings of the Lord, who is all-powerful, Prabhavishnavi Namaha. As the all-powerful Lord accepts the humble service of his devotee and devotional activities of the Archana, his form as the worshipable deity in the temple, similarly the body of a pure Vaishnava changes transcendentally at once when he gives himself unto the service of the Lord and is trained by a qualified Vaishnava. The injunction of Vaishnava regulation is the connection, in this connection, runs as follows. Prabhupada will give the translation. He is quoting from the Padma Purana. Arche Vishnu Shiladhir Gurushu Nara Matir Vaishnave Jati Buddhi Sri Vishnor Namni Sabda Samanya Buddhihi, etc. Translation: one should not consider the deity of the Lord as worshipped in the temple to be an idol, nor should one consider the authorized spiritual master an ordinary man, nor should one consider a pure Vaishnava to belong to a particular caste, etc. From Padma Purana, the exact reference detail is not given. Last paragraph, a short paragraph. The conclusion is that the Lord, being all-powerful, can, under any and every circumstance, accept anyone from any part of the world, either personally or through his bona fide manifestation as a spiritual master. Obviously, Srila Prabhupada was convinced of this because he went all over the world to collect people from all kinds of background, fallen condition. Lord Chaitanya accepted many devotees from communities other than the Varnasramites. Varnasramites. Prabhupada is using the word. It's the first time I see it here. Varnasramites. And he himself declared to teach us that he does not belong to any caste or social order of life, but that he is the eternal servant of the Lord, who maintains the damsels of Vrindavan, Lord Krishna. That is the way of self-realization. And this ends our long purport this morning. Any comments or questions on this? This purport is especially of interest for those who study history. Yes, study history. Try. We'll help you.
For the Padma Purana, one should not consider the deity of Lord and worship as an idol, but was spiritual masters were ordinary men, nor pure Vaishnava who belong to a particular caste.
Yes.
So how can one develop this consciousness, always be aware that the deity is not so the spiritual master of the ordinary man?
Yes. How to develop, the question is how to develop the consciousness, as Prabhupada is making reference in the purport here, quoting from the Padma Purana, one particular verse explaining that the form of the Lord on the altar, the Arshaligra form, is not an ordinary form. It is directly the manifestation or directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, the spiritual master should not be considered or seen as an ordinary man, and also pure Vaishnavas.
Not to a particular caste.
Yes, should not be seen as coming from a particular caste. So the question is how to understand this, or how to come to that level of realization or understanding. Two things. One is that the basic philosophy of Krishna consciousness teaches us from the very beginning that we cannot understand things by ourselves, and therefore Atha Sri Krishna Namadi na bhavet agrayam indriyai sevan mukhe ijivado swayam ivas kuratyada. We therefore accept the statements of the Shastra, knowing that our senses, our mind, material senses, material intelligence are imperfect, right? Secondly, we can, in addition to uh, accepting the Shastra, we also have a process by which, when properly applying that process, this is also referred to in this morning's purport, systematic association, systematic application of the process will help one to gradually, this was also nicely explained in some previous verses just a couple of days ago, that in a very natural, evolutionary way, this purification, this process of purification will be taking place, and one will gradually gain understanding that the Lord is not simply some stone image or wooden image on the altar, or that the spiritual master is not ordinary person, and for that matter that Vaishnavas, any Vaishnavas are also not ordinary individuals, and should not be judged as coming from some particular caste, or for that matter coming from some particular country. I will not mention the country, but in one particular country where I was preaching, uh, devotees had a tendency of being, of accepting more uh, spiritual masters of ISKCON that had a body from India as opposed to a body not from India. Right? Yeah. It is wrong to consider that he is more bona fide because he's from India or because he's born in a Brahmana family. These are all material designations which have nothing to do actually with the actual status of an individual. The whole purport and text today is making this point that anyone from any kind of background, by proper contact association, by taking up the process of devotional service, can rise above even the level of being Brahmana, because the Brahmana stage, which is of course a very elevated stage, is not the perfectional stage. The perfectional stage is, because Brahmana stage is mode of goodness. The perfectional stage is above ordinary goodness. It is Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness, which is Vaishnava. So therefore, Prabhupada often would explain, when someone actually becomes the pure Vaishnava, automatically all the good qualities of the Brahmana are um, manifest within that individual. So we gradually can come to know, to understand, and to accept and deal accordingly with the deities on the altar, with the gurus, as we become purified in consciousness. Yeah. Actually, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it mentions that anyone who chants the holy name, forget about somebody being a spiritual master, anyone who chants the holy name is not an ordinary person. You know, anyone, we were discussing, Prabhupada was explaining about there's two levels of confidential knowledge. Confidential knowledge is to know that we're not this body. Animals don't know they're not the body. Rather, they're completely convinced that they're body. They are most convinced. And so therefore, the first level of confidential knowledge is to know that we're not the body, that we are spirit soul, that the spirit soul is within this body. And the most confidential knowledge is to know the process and to come to the perfectional stage of realizing who is God and developing our love for God, our love for Krishna, knowing that God is a person, a particular person who has particular names, different names according to his pastimes or activities like that. Yeah. Anything else? No? One day he'll ask a question. One day. Okay. Jai Grantaraj SrimadBhagavatam2 ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Premanande.